Well, I'll do a little introduction and then we can go ahead and get started. I'm Tara. I'm with EduFlow and EduFlow Academy. We facilitate some courses on learning and development, instructional design. We facilitate some cohort-based courses, which we really love. And we have a whole EduFlow Academy community that we connect with. And we reached out to Mike and Deanna to introduce us to their process for creating storyline projects, but having this consistency and this sort of template design. And so we're definitely really excited to learn from them. And so I'll let you, Mike and Deanna, take it away. And again, feel free to post and put questions in the chat and I'll take a look at them and I'll keep us running in the background.
Good morning, welcome. This is the presentation that Mike and I did at DevLearn in Las Vegas in October. And so we're just really repurposing what we did there. We're thrilled that you're here. If you have any questions at all, pop them in the chat. We're happy to take them. So we're going to talk about how did we leverage all of these resources to create a whole lot of content. We had 7 summer interns that ranged in age from 18 to several teachers. I won't tell you their age. 2 brand new instructional designers. This was their first instructional design gig, and they mostly came from education. And we created 133 lessons. And we're talking like 45-minute, hour-long e-learning lessons. These are not 5-minute lessons. These are chunks. We covered 5 different products that our company sells and 13 different modules. So we had a lot of variables. We didn't have a lot of experience, and Mike and I had to really design a very scaffolded process to take all of these variables and create all of this e-learning. And I will tease you with the fact that it has been super, super accepted by our partner community. They love it.
Go ahead, Deanna.
First?
Yeah, no,
go ahead. I'm Deanna Flanagan. I talk more than Mike. It is what it is. We have found that our abilities really mesh well. Like what Mike thinks of, I don't, and what I think of, Mike doesn't. So it really has been a very effective partnership. I'm considered a partner learning manager, but I like the title training ambassador better. That culture of learning was not really here when Mike and I started, and we have worked really, really hard to start developing that culture of learning where people know that there's resources out there, they know there's a path to get there, and they're using it. And so there's, we get emails all the time. Where's this? Where's this? How can I find this? Which to me is super satisfying because they're using the stuff that we're making, right? So we're not creating it in a vacuum and no one's using it. So to me, that is super satisfying when I get that email from somebody saying, help, how do I? And I've got a resource for them. So we are part of the customer success team. I always forget to say that. That's enough about me.
And my name is Mike Belknap. I'm the training operations manager. So for those that may not have a training operations department, it's focusing on LMS reporting. I do CPE compliance. And we'll talk about CPE credit when we get into our case study, but also content development and delivery. So a little bit of everything. And I work with Deanna and the customer enablement team, and we're super excited to be here and to tell our story. So we'll start with a little bit about who we are, then we'll dig into the case study, and then we'll actually go in and show you what we ended up creating. And that's our favorite part of the presentation, is getting into storyline and getting to show you what actually the end product was for this entire process. So we'll finish up with that. So starting off, who is Trintech? So we provide a SaaS, or software as a service, software solution portfolio for finance organizations. We have a little over 500 employees with our headquarters in Dallas, Texas, and we also have offices in London, Oslo, and Stockholm. 50% of the Fortune 50 are Trintech customers. So we are a smaller company, but we have a big impact for finance and accounting organizations.
So I talked at the very beginning that we had 5 products and 13 processes within those products. So this is just that, brain dump. These are our main products. So we have 4 large enterprise products: Cadency, T-Rex, Cadency Direct, and Reconnect. And then we have a mid-market product that is called ADRA. And within those products, we have different processes. Those processes are, for the most part, standalone processes. So we keep acquiring companies, and then we try to Frankenstein them into a process so it all gets together. So each one of those match, cert, JE, close, and compliance was a standalone process that we put together under Cadency to sell to customers. So it's a lot, and it was across a very wide spectrum of knowledge that we needed to teach.
Yeah,
We have,
and there won't
ahead.
be a quiz later on all of these products. Really,
No.
this is to give you that context of there's a lot there. So when we get into creating all this content, we just wanted to put that context in place about how much is actually needed.
We have 3 main customers that we serve, and initially our focus, go ahead and pop all 3 of those up there. Our initial focus was just on partners. And as Mike and I looked at it, we kind of backed up and tried to figure out how we could leverage all this content that we were making across these 3 customers that we serve. So we serve direct customers that professional services goes in and implements them, and the customer uses our software. We serve partners who we sell our software to, and then they implement it for their customers. And then we also serve internal Trintechers, right? We're just like everybody else, where people are moving and joining, and they need to get up to speed on the software, whether they're professional services, support, product, QA, pre-sales, whatever they are, they need to get up to speed on the software as well. So we really looked at how could we serve all 3 of these audiences with one set of courses instead of 3 sets of courses, right? Instead of 133, we'd have 400 because of the maintenance, right? We've got a small team, not a lot of experience. We want to maintain 133, not 400 lessons. So that really became a focus.
So let's go ahead and set the stage. Prior to Deanna and I coming on board, the training team consisted of 3 trainers, and these 3 people were responsible for the creation and the delivery of the training content. And the content that was offered at that point consisted of live instructor-led workshops, webinars, handouts, videos, and a few Easy Generator courses. And if you're not familiar with Easy Generator, it's very similar to Articulate Rise in that it's an app or a web-based authoring tool. So there was content that existed previously, and it was built out by application or by product and process, like we looked at on that slide previously. And they had also defined 2 roles, and we'll call them user roles. And the first role was the user, end user. So this would be the person that completes day-to-day tasks within the product. So that's the user role. And we also had the admin role. And this is anyone responsible for updating the initial configuration of the product or maintaining the application. Also at that time, we had applied for self-study, continuing professional education, or CPE credit through NASBA. And NASBA is the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. So if you're a licensed CPA, you're required to achieve a certain number of credits each year or every other year in order to maintain your credentials. So we are fortunate enough to be able to offer that CPE credit for our live instructor-led and our webinars. So we wanted to also be able to offer that for self-study or for e-learning, because that's a huge value add for us and a differentiator for us in the marketplace, but it's also a big value add for our customers too. Because being, when you get to the end of the year and you're a CPA and you need 15 credits, we want to be able to be that place that our customers can come to, not just to increase their knowledge of the products, but, as a little nice bonus advantage, being able to get that CPE credit. So it was a big deal for us to be able to offer that for self-study. And finally, our existing partner training consisted of our partner enablement team going on site to the partners to deliver training. Now, at that point, the partner enablement team realized that there was probably a better way to do this, and that was through e-learning. So they hired Deanna to come in and create that e-learning for the partners.
Which is kind of funny because I know nothing about accounting. So it's like Deanna was hired to create configuration training, the hardest process that we have for partners. Yeah, I can dig in, I can learn anything, right? But that it was a very narrow focus. So I was hired to create configuration training just for partners. That's it. Blinders on, head down, let's go. And I worked really hard at that. Talked to every SME on the block over and over and over again. How do I do this? How do I set it up? There's so many processes needed to set up configuration for, it was the 5 cadency processes that I was working on. And we started to get something built. It didn't have a template, didn't have master slides. It was loose. It was, here's the simulations, let me tell you why you're doing it. We had the basic components, but it wasn't scaffoldable, it wasn't leverageable, but we did start to create it. Partners started to use it. Company really liked it. And it was like, we need more help. So Mike came on, and we started to look at a broader focus where we could create e-learning in a standardized approach for all 3 of our customers, our internal folks, our customers, and our partners, for all 3 roles, because the user and admin role training, other than the instructor-led training, were webinars that people had recorded. So it's like, here, watch a 90-minute video and see if you can find what you need. Where our e-learning is very structured, very searchable, so you can find exactly what you need when you need it after you've taken it the first time. We had also hired a contractor at this point to try to get everything built for Cadency. Cadency ends up being 85 lessons. So it's a big chunk of the 133 that we created. The problem with it was we didn't have templates. We didn't have master slide. Even though we all started from the same place initially, everybody got to be creative in their own way, and it didn't look and feel exactly the same. The cognitive load for this particular product is so high that we realized that anything that we could do to reduce that, to streamline it, to templatize it, was going to help our learners. So that's what we started doing, kind of backed up a little bit and started looking at it from that perspective. We still, I just want to say one more thing. We were still branding it at the Cadency level. Remember, I talked about the 5 different products that we sell. So we're still branding it just at the Cadency level, not anywhere else. And we'll get there. We'll get there.
So at this point, we need to ask, what is our goal? What is our end goal? What are we ultimately trying to achieve? And the answer to that is a full baseline of e-learning for our Cadency product with CPE. So this means the user, admin, and configuration e-learning for each Cadency module, which comes out to a total of 15 courses and 85 lessons. And we also wanted to be able to offer CPE credit for each course, which meant that we needed to incorporate specific NASBA required elements into our template. And those elements included a search capability, unique feedback for review questions, glossary of key terms, and course and player navigation. So working towards this end goal, we arrived at a decision point when a new product was released. So we have our e-learning template, which was designed specifically for Cadency, like Deanna mentioned, and we've already completed 30 lessons with this template. And many of them have already been consumed by the partners. So it's out there and it's being used. So with the release of this new product, we needed to figure out how we're going to approach the creation and the design of e-learning for other products. So especially this new product, Cadency Direct, it was similar, but it wasn't the same. So do we create a new template? Well, we could. The branding colors are the same, but the logo would need to be changed, right? Very small change, but that means maintaining a separate template, another template. So like Deanna said, we stepped back to see how we could take a broader approach to not just the design, but also how we use the content. So identifying areas where features and functionality are the same for multiple products, well, then we only need to create content once and apply it to those multiple products. So taking that same mindset into our template design, we realized that we needed to make some changes if we wanted to be able to offer one template or use one template for multiple products and not have to maintain multiple templates for each product.
I will say we got a lot smarter over the first 12 months of developing this. And when we get to the end, we're gonna tell you the 4 biggest lessons that we learned, because we made a whole lot of mistakes and corrected them. So the first thing we did is we backed it up. Let's build this at the Trintech level across all the products and really make it product agnostic. So we had to change all the color, the background, because we were burgundy and blue and we ended up being teal and navy because that's our Trintech colors. But we backed all of the e-learning out to this product agnostic style, one template for all the products. Did we submit NASBA again, Mike? This was the successful one?
We did.
Okay, so we had incorporated all the NASBA requirements, which are like 33 pages long. It's not one checklist, right? It's 33 pages. Mike navigated us all through that. We included all of that in there. And we had 30 lessons that partners had been using, so we could really incorporate that feedback. I'm going to tease a little bit of that because the biggest win for me, because I was getting like 6 emails a day from partners, I finished it. How come that LMS didn't give me credit? Well, they were reading it, but they weren't going through the simulations. So I found this an internal variable, and we'll show it to you in the template. But there's a built-in variable in Articulate that lets you tell a learner what percentage of the course they had completed. And we put that on every slide. And then we put it on the second to the last slide. We're like, you're done. This is the percent complete you are. I quit getting 6 emails today. It was like that. It was lovely. But by having real users take our lessons, we were really able to leverage that feedback really, really effectively. If there's any way that you can push out a small set of your learning to real learners and get that feedback, it really allows you to improve the template and the master slides going forward. That was such a big win that we didn't anticipate, but it was like, yes, we can use this. We can really, really improve it. The difference between the template and the master slides we use to lock down anything that stays the same, all the design elements, all the coloring, all the location of everything, the fonts, the size, the highlighting, the bolding, anything that was going to remain the same across all 133 lessons locked down in the master slides. Anything that would change, we created a template with lots of examples that you could use what you needed and delete the rest, to create a super consistent learner experience. And Mike took this, so we built our template, we built our master slides, and we took one of the smaller lessons because we didn't need to kill NASBA, and we submitted it to them to see, do we pass for CPE? And with CPE, you had to get one approved, and then it's that that certification is good across all the other lessons that you built. So we didn't have to submit all 133 lessons to NASBA. We just had to submit one. And once we got their blessing, as long as we incorporated that template and master slides across all of them, we got credit for it.
Yeah, and that's what made the template and the master slides so valuable for the CPE part of it, is that what we got approved through NASBA, we needed to make sure we could replicate for every lesson that we created that we wanted to offer CPE credit for. So locking everything down and using the template ensured that consistency, so that every lesson we created with this template using these master slides met all of the requirements for NASBA. So it was a big game changer for us, and it helped to speed up the process and to ensure consistency, but also compliance. So we now have our shiny new Trintech product agnostic, hopefully NASBA approved very soon template that we want to start using going forward. But what do we do with these 30 lessons that we've already created in this old Cadency product template? So that brought us to our next decision point, the process. And we developed a process that utilized each person's strengths and allowed us to bring in interns, a few high schoolers, and some K through 12 teachers, all with zero instructional design experience and zero Articulate experience to help with this conversion, excuse me, from our old Cadency template to our new Trintech template. So how did we do that? We created a detailed stepped out checklist that walked the interns through the process of moving the content from one template to the other. And we combined this checklist along with training, and we took a scaffold approach to the process. So we would have them do one portion of the checklist. We'd train them how to do it, and then they would go through that multiple times. And then we'd train them on the next portion of the checklist, and they'd go through it multiple times. So we would, by the time we finished this initial training, they've done every portion of the checklist multiple times, so that then when they go through the process, they have that experience already of working through the checklist. So the interns move the content over to the new template, and then that allows us to use the instructional designers to just review that content. So making sure that it's accurate, making sure it's in the right place. And since the IDs are only responsible for the review, not the actual creation or conversion, then that frees them up to create e-learning in the new template. So new content in the new template while this conversion is taking place. We also had a second level review, which focused just on formatting and branding. And then we had a final review, which made sure all the NASBA required elements were in place before we published the lesson. So essentially what we created is an e-learning production line. Starts with the interns, moves to the instructional designers for review, and then multiple review levels after that. And then that lesson's done. And then you repeat the process for the next lesson and the next lesson. From a management perspective, the first summer we were able to hire 4 interns for the summer to convert all 30 lessons at the same cost of hiring 1 contractor. That following summer, we brought in 3 more interns to work on converting an additional 33 lessons. So by that second summer, our template and our process were so well defined, we were able to actually do more work with less people.
Sorry, I was answering a question in there. So mission accomplished. We completed a full baseline. All the courses give CPE credit, and we have got great feedback from customers and partners. It has become a real true differentiator between Trintech and our main competitor. And when we presented this in Vegas for DevLearn, we got some feedback that said, you know, did you treat your interns like robots or whatever? It was like, no, not at all. I mean, because of the scaffolded approach, because of the checklist, because of how we took everybody through each step, our interns after 8 weeks left with true Articulate 360 skills. They knew what states and layers and scroll bars and variables. I mean, they could use Articulate. Every single intern that we had that was hireable, right? Not the high schoolers, got a job outside of education. So it really gave them skills like that they could translate into hireable resume builders. So I think that in our initial presentation of it, it sounded like we didn't treat our interns very well, but like this internship was real hardcore, but it gave them that bounce to get out of the classroom, which all of our interns wanted. So I feel like we served them well, not poorly. So this is just a little program adoption slide, and I've changed this every time we present this. I change this. In 2021, we had just a few partners complete the lessons, and that's how we got the feedback for those first 30 lessons. But this year alone, we've had 1,600 discrete partners complete lessons. So it's been a huge hit with the partner community. We're trying to figure out how to push it more to customers and to internals that's a huge goal for us in 2023. The deal with customers is professional services goes on site and they do a little in-person training or virtual training, depending on COVID. And they feel like they already know it. So we're trying to find ways to really push this also to customers, because even though you take a 2-day training, the e-learning is there as a resource for you to go back and remember stuff or refresh yourself, or somebody new comes in. So that's a big goal for us in 2023, is getting this kind of participation from customers and internals. But as you can see, we definitely have participation of our partners, and they're really happy to have a resource that they can use. One of the other things we did for partners is they have a blank site, and I call it a sandbox, where they can do an actual practice. So they take the e-learning for configuration, and on the screen over here, they actually go through a real live website and do the things that we're showing them in the e-learning. So that's been another really effective piece of this program. This is a comment from one of our European partners. Just an update on the partner training program. Firstly, as previously conveyed, we are very impressed by the resources and the quality of the program. It is really first class. That made me happy. So we've learned a lot of lessons.
Yeah. So what are the lessons that we learned with this project? First, think big about who the content can serve. So don't limit yourself. So initially our focus was just on the partners and just for Cadency. So don't limit yourself. When you're creating your content, designing it, think about how many people you can impact with that content. Not just maybe this one specific business or role or position that you're creating the content for, but step back and think, how many people can we impact with this content?
Utilize the same format. I have been in other ID roles, and every single lesson was different because the instructional designer wanted to be creative. And so every time a learner got in there, they were like, oh, okay, what do I have to do? I mean, ultimately, the learning it's about your learner. It's not about your need for creativity. Mike and I got to be very creative in setting this all up, and right, our ID and our interns didn't, but they were learning the process. You can be creative in other avenues and other venues and job aids and webinars and videos. But because of the depth and breadth of this program, we wanted to really reduce the cognitive load on our learners, because it's finance and accounting software. This is not easy stuff. Anything we can do to reduce the cognitive load necessary to take the learning was something that we wanted to do. So don't be afraid to have it all look and feel the same. That actually is a consideration for your learners, especially with what we have, right? They're not looking for razzle dazzle, you know, they're like, give me the information. How do I configure this software? It's very product training focused as opposed to sales and HR focused, right? It's not soft. It's not soft at all.
The next lesson would be to maximize how the template's used and create master slides. So if you can, like we did, we were able to create a template at the corporate branding level as opposed to the product specific level, which opened up the use of the template for anything that we create. So you don't want to back yourself into a corner design wise if you don't have to. And then also use master slides, lock down anything that you can lock down, because it just helps to promote consistency and to reduce errors when you're creating the e-learning if everything is locked down within master slides.
You don't have to be a senior level ID to be effective in Storyline. You can start building with a set of master slides and templates. And I pulled this up. It's 28 pages long. It is a very extensive checklist, right? It walks them through step by step with screenshots, what to do, what not to do, that we built for the interns and the new instructional designers. And that scaffolded approach by having them, you know, let us show you 1 or 2 pages of this checklist, and then you go practice 10 times, and then come back at lunch. Let me show you 1 or 2 more pages. You go practice 10 times. That scaffolded approach to teach people how to use Storyline was super effective for us. So as long as the person in charge of designing master slides and templates knows what they're doing, you can skill people up very, very quickly. At the end of 8 weeks, I feel like they were really ready to take the jump outside of that structure and be able to learn a whole lot more, but they had the basic skills to work in Storyline. So it was awesome.
All right, Deanna, let's go ahead and, do you want to look at the finished product first or the template?
Let's look at the finished product. That's my favorite part. So this is what our template looks like. This is our bulk account maintenance slide. So there's your title. The next thing there, will this let me, can you, okay, yeah, okay. The next thing is the breadcrumb trail. So if so people will take all of this training, and a lot of times they'll take all of it, right? They'll sit down for a week and they'll take certification training or match training, but then they need to come back and now, how do I do this particular process again? So this breadcrumb trail takes them exactly where they need to go in the software. And we have, that's consistent across all slides. And then we call the next part, the explain it slide. It's really the what are you doing and why are you doing it? And it scrolls, and you'll notice my favorite little button down there at the bottom, the 1% complete. We put that variable on every single explain it slide. And I mean, they adopted it immediately. It was awesome. And they knew how far they had. And it also gave them a really good feel for how long this course was, right? If I've gone through a couple slides and I'm only 5% complete, it's like, oh, this is going to be a long course. Even though we tell them at the beginning how long it is, this gives them a real good indication of how quickly they're learning it. And then on the side, you have 4 buttons plus the menu slide. So the hamburger up there is the menu slide that takes you back to the main menu. And then this is our simulation, our best practices, our tips, and our knowledge check. So let's go through simulation first, just a couple slides. So the simulation takes them into the actual software and steps them through. Click this, click this, click this. It just walks them through absolutely everything that they have to do. We've got our previous and our next button, and that's significant when we get to the master slides, which is why I'm calling it out. But it works either way. You can click on the hotspot or you can click on the previous and next. The menu takes you back to the explain it slide. And then we've got any best practices. So we tried to reduce that explain it, to reduce the cognitive load to absolute necessities, and then pull out the best practices and the tips that we'd gotten from subject matter experts that would be relevant to you, but maybe the second time through, or maybe when you go back in and you're trying to remember it again. So we tried to pull anything that we possibly could out, because it's a lot. It's finance and accounting software. And then the tips is the same way. You know, errors that people commonly make, anything that we could pull out, we put there. And then the knowledge check, because of NASBA and the CPE, we had to have question specific feedback for every single question. So it couldn't just be, this is wrong. It had to be, this is wrong and this is why it's wrong for every single question. That's time consuming. It is definitely time consuming. So that's our, and see my
yeah, one other thing I want to call out, these icons, and you know, we preach and promote consistency. These icons are used for all of our other content. So anywhere that we talk about a best practice or a tip or a knowledge check or a question, we use the same icons in our training guides, in our decks for our instructor-led content, so that it's consistent for anything that they're viewing or consuming that we've created. We want to make sure that that consistency stretches across the different delivery methods as well. The same thing with the breadcrumb trail that Deanna was talking about earlier. The way that we show the navigation or describe the navigation within the product is always the same, so that they know what they're looking at, whether it's an e-learning or a training guide or a webinar. It's always consistent for everything that we create. You want to go into the template now?
Let's go into the master slides first, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So the first a half dozen master slides look like they're totally blank. They're not. If you look, just grab anyone. Yeah. So if you see over there in the slide layers on the right hand side, it's our previous and next buttons and our menu hamburger up there at the top. If you don't put your previous and next layer as the very first, all of the other master slides layer on top of that. And it seems like a simple solve, but it took me a whole day to figure that out and articulate support, because it just kept getting overlaid by the format that's in the next couple slides. So if you're using that kind of thing where it's just something really simple and only that on a slide, put it first, and then you're good. We have previous and next. We have just previous. I mean, we have a couple different variables there. So then the next set of master slides is the format with the bar on the side for all of the different slides that we have. So objectives, summary progress, player navigation, just pick any of them. These are things that are consistent across all of the learning. So these were part of our master slides, and you would just apply this layout within the template, and it's static. It just stays the same for everybody.
Yeah, these were some of the items that were required by NASBA, this player navigation and course navigation. So since they're a requirement, then they have to be in every lesson that we create. And like Deanna said, these hotspots, these will never change. These will always open these additional slide layers because we need to provide that specific information. So these are perfect candidates for the master slides. They have to be in every lesson and they will never change. So that checks all of the boxes for a master slide. So that's where we ended up putting a lot of our NASBA required items in the master slides because they weren't going to change, which was much easier for us to handle if they were automatically always there and available to put in.
And then down here at the bottom, number 4, we have master slides for each user role. So this is admin, this is config, and the next one's user, and then I think we have a manager one, depending on the process. And like I'm telling you, anything you can make a master slide, make a master slide. Make all your font decisions, your color decisions, your location decisions, your button decisions, make them all in master slides, because then they can't be messed up, right? If it's in the master slide, when you're working in the template, you can't change it. You can't inadvertently change it or intentionally change it. It's there. So that was the biggest problem between the first pass, is that we didn't have the master slides set up. So everybody's layout was the same, but slightly different. So this just really created that look, that professional look, where everything was consistent across everything. All right, let's go look at the template. So it looks big, but when a new person comes in, they open this template, they save it as their new, and we also have one hidden because we know somebody inadvertently will change the initial template. So build it and then hide a copy of it. And then you can see we've applied the layout that we created in the master slides to all of these template slides. And then we've created a whole lot of initial setup, so you don't have to start from scratch. You just have to go plunk your information in there. And then you would delete, if we look up at the top, there's materials for certification, for match, for close, for JE, and for compliance. You would just delete the ones that you didn't need. We wanted to make it so that there was the least opportunity to mess up possible. If you look over there at 1.12, our main menu, that's kind of how we navigate, how they navigate through. So this is, 8 explain it boxes that they would go to, but then we also have it set up for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all of them are set up, ready to go. It means that the XY axis is the same. So whatever course you're taking, if you're doing 15 explain it boxes, use this. Make everything look and feel the same, right? That's the whole goal of this template.
And the template design was also for consideration for the intern process. The conversion process as well. So when the interns were moving the content over, we wanted to make sure that they had places to put that content, right? So for each menu item, we have a corresponding explain it slide so that the links are already built into the menu. So it just, again, it helps just make it a faster process, an easier process if these links are already in place. So then they're just adding content to the existing scene and then making the necessary edits.
Can you go into scene 13 and show them the variable? And so if you go up to triggers and click that variable box, these are all the built-in variables that Storyline already provides. And you can see that project progress variable, I can't ever say that, is used 12 times. So any of the variables that you use, this will tell you how many times in this lesson or in your course that particular variable is used. So that was such a huge win. I just cannot even tell you what 6 less emails a day meant to my life. And it's been perfect. Like, I have not had one person since we added that call me with the indignant, I finished it. None of them. Oh, what do I? So that was a huge win for me. We had another question about the slide layers in the master slides. Deanna, I'm guessing you're asking about the previous and next and why we had to do the buttons first. Is that correct? Okay, can you go back to the master and see how we have like the bar and the white or the picture layout when I put the previous and next layers after that. So as scene 2 or 3 or 4, it would overlay it with this picture, with this green bar and the white background, instead of just showing me the previous and next slides. So once I put the previous and next first, it was fine. It worked perfectly. And that's just an articulate. It's just an articulate thing. I will say, pardon me. Articulate is really, really responsive. When you're stuck, you're like, this is not working. And you send them your project, they're really, really helpful about working through it. I mean, and sometimes triggers get messed up or layers get messed up and you're like, I don't see it. I didn't change anything from one course to another course. And somehow it gets messed up. We've used them a lot and they've been very, very responsive. So plug for Articulate. What other questions do you guys have? I feel like we've been talking for 44 minutes because we have. So it's adding the layer. And then when you add another master slide, the layer remains even though the slide is like, yes. Yeah. So you apply. So when you're building it, so I go up there at the top under slides where it says apply layout. And I know Mike does it somewhere else. In Storyline, you can do anything you want in multiple places. Yeah. So you just pick the layout that you want to apply to that slide. And if you're applying the previous and next layer, those are all the previous and next layers that we have set up.
And we use those specifically for simulations. So when we're working on our simulation slides, so we would apply from the beginning to second to last slide, we would apply the previous and next layer because we want to have both buttons. We want to have the previous button and the next button. But on the last slide of the simulation, the layout would be just previous. Since there is no next, there's not another slide to go to in the simulation, it would just be the previous layer. So it would just be the previous button and then the menu icon in the top right-hand corner, so that when they get to the end of the simulation, they would click menu to return to the explain it slide instead of clicking next. So that's why we have the multiple versions of the previous and next layers, because we apply it depending on whether it's the beginning to second to last slide or if it's the actual end slide of the simulation.
Stay right there. Stay on one of those simulation slides.
Yeah.
So if you look over there under slide properties on the far right-hand bottom corner where it says slide properties, The slide advances, the when revisiting, and then the default buttons, we had to configure that too. You know, what do we want to happen when they come back in to redo a simulation? So using those, the slide advances and the when revisiting really allows you to customize the experience you want your learner to have the next time they come into your course. And we knew that these courses would be reference materials, pardon me, that people would come back in and want to just go. We were looking at BAM before. We have BAM and DAM processes, which I always chuckle about. But we knew that they would come back in. So, you know, thinking through how you want that slide to advance and when somebody comes back in is also important.
One thing we realized too for this revisiting, if you have some type of motion or animation in your slide, your recording, then you'll want to make sure that reset to initial state is selected, because otherwise, if they go back to the slide, it won't start it back at the beginning of the animation or the motion within your recording. So make sure reset to initial state is selected so that it kind of resets that motion for the next time they go into that specific slide.
Deanna,
we took ours out. Hold on. We took ours out. So, you know, for those that use action fine tuning, so this is where we went to take out the any animations. And this was, I find this very helpful, because there are instances where when you're recording your screen, you're hovering a little too long on a word and then the tooltip shows up. And you don't want that sitting in your simulation slide. So you would just remove the animation, and then you can just move down the timeline until that tooltip disappears, which was super helpful for us to be able to do that.
And it also, by doing that, it reduces the size of your project considerably. Because if you think about really long simulations, and they're basically all videos. So if you reduce that to, you know, a microsecond or whatever it saves it as, instead of 5 seconds for each slide, you significantly reduce the size, and that reduces the time it takes a lesson to load for a learner. So that's a consideration for your learner as well.
Yeah.
We didn't like the players next and previous buttons. We thought they were ugly, and we didn't like the location of them, and we wanted to use our own. You don't have to do that, obviously. We just didn't like how they looked, and we wanted our buttons. But because of the buttons that we chose that were the double arrows, you had to click inside that little arrow. So that's why we put a hotspot on top of our previous and next buttons, so that they could click anywhere on that button to get it to work. That was definitely a lesson learned. They're big.
Paul, to answer your question, it would vary on the amount of content, but it probably ranges between 15 to 45 megs per lesson. Just some have more sims than others, so it's a larger file size. But that's probably the range, 15 to 45 megs per lesson.
So universal principles or best practices. Keep your learner. I mean, to me, the most important thing is to keep your learner in mind. What's going to make their life easiest? You know, the navigation and the things that you call out, like the cognitive load, the ability to navigate. An adult learner wants to know, what do they have to do and how do they have to do it? They don't really care about Aunt Sue's dog's cousin's father's situation, right? They want to know, how do I do my job better? So really, really focusing on that. And that was something Mike and I really had to stress to our new IDs and our interns, because they were all teachers, for either students or teachers, right? They weren't used to the difference between what you teach in a classroom, pedagogy, versus andragogy. How do you teach adults? That was a big learning curve that they all had to conquer, well, for a better word. Really getting them to focus on, what exactly do I need to know to do this job? And that's all they want to know. Best practices and tips are nice to have, but I don't have to have it. So those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, I would say when you're designing, be consistent. Consistency is my favorite word. Making sure if you're just, the way you have it designed here, and the elements you're using, and like, we looked at earlier the icons, and you're talking about best practices and tips with these icons in this way here, then do it the same way over here, because you want them to be able to carry that language and over to different content that they're viewing that you've created, so that there's this connection between the different delivery methods and the different content types. So be consistent, and not just across delivery types, but when you're creating e-learning. So same delivery method, same type of content, just be consistent in what you're creating. So, that was the issue that we had, which prompted this entire project for us, was the lack of consistency. And there was somebody had commented at DevLearn about, do you feel like that stifles creativity? And I mean, I understood the question, why it was being asked. I think for us, it doesn't have to be one or the other. I mean, I felt like we were creative in the way Deanna and I designed this. That was creative, having to do that. You don't have, but every lesson doesn't have to be this new, flashy or type of delivery methods. For our specific purposes, this met our objectives and it meets our customers' objective. It stays out of its own way and lets them go through the content. And that was our goal. We didn't want the template or the design of the player or the course to overshadow the content. So, and not all content is created the same. It's not, but for us specifically, this is what we were looking for. Something that was, I don't know if understated is the right word, but it didn't distract from the content. That was our goal.
And I mean,
So
Mike
I
has
think
been
we
really
can
good.
be creative and still be consistent and efficient. I think those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Mike has been really good about bringing the concepts that we created in the e-learning over to our virtual instructor-led training, to our manuals, to our PowerPoints, to our job aids, to our webinars. So once somebody gets into our content, they're like, oh yeah, I recognize that. I recognize that. I recognize that. So it's made the whole learning platform that we create consistent.
Yeah, this has been a really great example, and it's so fun to dive into someone else's project that's so well designed. I see how robust it is. I love the focus on efficiency, and speaking to that process of going back to the virtual led trainings and things. EduFlow, like what we do, is where you take that storyline project and maybe plop it into a course, and then that's where there might be like, the learner is going to do the project and do the specific learning. And then after that, maybe there's a discussion. And so you can decide based on what your objectives are or who's actually using the e-learning, that what kind of engagement you'd actually want to see with that. But very cool how it can be both an e-learning experience and then a job aid that they can come back to also.
Yeah, I mean, I know Mike is as well. We are very proud of this. We have put blood, sweat, and tears into this for 3 years, and it's our baby, or we are proud of what we've created, and we've gotten great feedback from it, which always helps, right? Because sometimes in training you don't know, are people liking it, are they using it, are they happy with it? So it's been a lot of work, but very satisfying.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much. If you all want to say thank you as well in the chat, or you can use the little reactions in Zoom to give a little reach out to us. Please reach out to us on LinkedIn or via email. Please. If you've got questions, if you want whatever, just, feel free to take our information and reach back out.
Always available to chat.
Awesome.
Well,
Well,
sometimes
we
available
really
to chat. We're so freaking busy.
available to chat, but give a lot of response time. There you go.
24 to
That's so
48
nice. Business hours.
Business,
Perfect.
of course,
Business
yes.
Yeah, perfect. I also want to just let everyone know that EduFlow Academy has a bunch of courses. If you haven't seen EduFlow Academy before, we have a bunch of courses. Some are self-paced, some are cohort-based. We're actually taking these sessions that we've been doing, these webinars, and plugging them into mini courses. So that's what we're going to do with this one as well. And so we'll share that out, and you can continue the conversation, see the recording, rewatch some parts if you want to kind of take a little peek at that. So we have a couple more minutes so we can answer a few more questions, but thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you so much. And I saw Namrata asked, is Storyline the only tool that you're using?
For
So
e-learning, it is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we use Camtasia for videos. We use Quizmaker for our exams. So Articulate Quizmaker, which is part of the presenter package for Articulate. I
Use
think those are-
PowerPoint and Word.
yeah. Office Suite. Yeah, I think those are the main ones. Yeah.
I mean, I think the reason that I'm more comfortable in Articulate is because it's so much like PowerPoint. You know, if you understand master slides in PowerPoint, it's the same thing in Storyline. If you ever open a Storyline file and you're like, well, this is showing when I preview it, but it's not there, go into your master slides. That's where it is. I remember very early on when I used PowerPoint, it was like, well, where is that coming from? But the continuity between PowerPoint and Articulate just makes it more comfortable for me to use.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah. And I love the point you made where it's not really about how, I love the term razzle dazzle. You don't need the razzle dazzle for the tool to make the learning happen. It depends on, your scenario and your learners and what's actually needed, but it doesn't always need to be something very snazzy and fancy if it gets the learning job done really well. And your learners can obviously come back to that and see exactly what they need to do, go through the simulation, and then, oh, this is exactly what I need to do in this very complex accounting program.
Well, and I came from an education background, so I definitely have that in my background. And with kids, you're trying to get them excited, like, whoa, here I am. Like, adults don't need that. They need to know how to get their job done. Like, that's what they want. And if you can incorporate a little bit, that's great. You want it to look professional. You want it to look clean. You want it to look engaging, but you don't need to punch them up every single lesson.
Excellent.
That's a big learning. Like, that's
Yeah.
a big, for teachers to get that. That's a big jump.
Absolutely. Any last questions from anyone else, or any last thoughts from Deanna or Mike?
Thanks for listening to us.
Yeah.
We had fun. Every time we do this, we have fun.
Awesome. At EduFlow, we like to sign off by letting everyone unmute themselves and say thank you or goodbye as they sign off. So if you want to, you can unmute yourself and say goodbye or thank you, and have a great day.
Great job. Thanks.
Thanks a
Thank you all.
lot.
Thanks a lot. It was
Great
great.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys.